Usually when we imagine the medieval knights, particularly those of the late 15th century, donning their majestic full-plate armors, we either imagine them with the sort of armor that is characteristic of the style of southern Germany or the northern Italian Milanese style. But were there other styles, and what did the knights of other medieval countries look like? Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and I reckon this is an extremely interesting topic. Generally speaking, we know about the Gothic style of the fluted armors with all those particular kinds of helmets like the sallet, like the Maximilian style of armor, and then we think of the Italian rounded and smooth armors. Usually when they wear pauldrons, they are very big, the left one being bigger, the right one being smaller, so asymmetrical style with the armets and the wrapper around, ready for jousting, ready for war. But we never really stop to think, or at least I usually don't, where there are the styles. Because think about it, okay, there were great armorers and great and very recognizable styles in Germany and Italy, but what about Spain? What about France, England, Luxembourg? There are so many other powers in the medieval period. Did they not have production? Well, of course, knights from these countries had their own productions, but did they look, basically, were they copies of the German and the Italian styles, or did they have their own flavor, their own take to it? And if they did, what did they look like? Well, this is not an easy question to answer because the archaeological evidence is scant, but we do know that there were other styles, and Dr. Tobias Capwell has done a great job with his book dedicated to the English style of armor to underline and bring forth, or bring to light, the English style. But in this video, we are looking at the Burgundians and their own special styles. What is Burgundy? Well, Burgundy, French Bourgogne, is a historical territory and a former administrative region of East Central France. So we're talking about French armor, but specifically about this section or this territory. Nearly everything in existence, as far as archaeological remains are concerned, is either Italian or German. We don't have much, so rather than looking at archaeology for this, we will have a look at iconography. Burgundy was a medieval state which rose like a star in the 14th and 15th centuries, and all of their fashion and courtly culture was exported all over Europe. France, the Holy Roman Empire, they all wanted to be like the Burgundians, specifically the Burgundian court. Even Toussaint in The Witch's Book and Media is based off Burgundy. Wouldn't that kind of culture, which by the way is also very military oriented, have a particularly peculiar different style of armor? But my answer is yes, and I'll try to prove it and defend my thesis on this video. We're talking about a rich state, fashion icon, and when I say rich, I mean rich, like really, really rich. I mean, just to give you a bit more perspective, they owned the extremely rich cities of Flanders. Now, there are some great sources that can help us visualize and imagine in a historically accurate way how these knights were, what they looked like. And one of these is an incident that happened, and it's very well detailed, to Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy. Now, I'll tell you all of this story, but before I do that, I'd like to mention the sponsor that made this video possible. Now, noble ones, if you've got some spare time and you've been looking for a book to read and you think, I'd like to find a good fantasy novel, but not just any novel. I want a book that once I start reading and I reach page 3, it will just hook me to the point that I just can't stop reading. And if that's what you're looking for, I have got it for you. Now, this book is called Virgin Killer, Sick with the Fairies. And don't let the title fool you. This is the craziest high fantasy novel writing that I've ever seen. Like, honestly, Mr. John Stone, you've got it. You see, Mr. Stone contacted me and said, hey, Metatron, I'd like to sponsor one of your videos. In return, I'd like you to just, show my book and perhaps put links in the description. That's all I want, and that would be great and would be grateful. In fact, that's what this was going to be at first. But here's the thing, as you probably know, I usually don't talk about something that I don't know anything about, so I decided to read, and if it doesn't catch me, it doesn't catch me. But as I reached page 3, I was absolutely hooked. I just couldn't stop reading. I'm halfway through the book and I love it. Every single page of this book is a treasure filled with the craziest, wacky world of magical creatures you could ever think. Like, some of the creatures that he came up with are absolutely... I was like finish a page and I'm like, what did I just read? I don't know how to do it justice, and I'm not paid to say this. I was just paid to show the book. But I want to say this. In fact, I'm actually getting a copy for my girlfriend because this book is giving me a lot of it. It's an experience. The percentage of humans that you will find here is incredibly low. Generally speaking, you'll be seeing like merchants who are like pig men, and then you'll find frog women. You'll find the Knights of the Round Cheese, who are actually made of cheese, which is like insane. And then there will be like these special guards who are ostriches and they use beak swords. It's as if a Disney cartoon, a Miyazaki Hayao anime, and Dark Souls had a threesome and produced it. Like, literally. I'll tell you more about the story and the protagonist towards the end of the video, so stick towards the end. There will also be a bonus clip from the author, but I really want to suggest you check this book out. You'll find links in the description below. Absolutely worth it. This is full of dirty humor, horror. It's like a great mixture, a great concoction. Loving it, every page of it. Back on our topic. Okay, welcome back. So let me tell you this interesting incident, this little story that has to do with Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy. So you have to understand that Charles the Bold was a very powerful man. He was very wealthy. So you could imagine this man has literally everything he wanted, and yet that's not the case. There was one thing that he did not have, and he never will have, and that he really wanted, and that was being king. He wanted the title of king. So he would have really liked if he could receive the title of King of Burgundy. Now, who do you ask for such a thing? Well, of course you can't ask the King of France, because, I mean, he's a king already, and that would mean independence for Burgundy, most likely. So no, he decides, hey, I'm going to ask the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, at this time, the Holy Roman Emperor was Frederick III. We're talking about the father of Maximilian I, very famous. So he decides, I'm going to go to meet the emperor. And where do they meet? Well, they meet in the German city of Trier, which is basically not far away from the border with Luxembourg. So as they go, this is how the sources describe this man. So he was wearing a fully gilded armor. Now already picture that. The entirety of his harness is fully gilded, covered in gold. On his helmet, he has got as a crest a ruby the size of the head of a child. All of his garments are stitched and filled with pearls. The very detailed account also tells us that he brought with him many knights with all of their gear and all of their kits in their splendor. He carried the treasure of Burgundy with him, and he also carried a fleur de lis, so the kind of symbol of France, entirely made of silver, the size of a man. What a show-off. Did he actually get what he wanted? No. I mean, the Holy Roman Emperor was a very pragmatic man, as far as we understand. He actually was, on that day, he was just wearing his morning gown. Imagine that. Like, the freaking Duke of Burgundy looked more like an emperor than the actual Holy Roman Emperor. Anyways, it doesn't really matter the fact that he didn't get the title of king. What matters about this story, what we can learn from this story, is how incredible Burgundian knights looked. What an interesting event. Let's have a look at the source material. Now, there are military ordinances that can help us. So what is a military ordinance? Well, from a medieval perspective, they are basically papers that structure, in this case, the Burgundian military rules and requirements. In other words, the king brings up the rules you have to follow in order to join the military, go on campaign and whatnot. These state that you have to bring for yourself an armor, horse armor or barding, a mace, a long sword, an arming sword, a dagger, squires, soldiers, and they all have to be fully kitted, fully equipped. And it also specifies what they need to wear, some of which are actually quite interesting. For example, archers in the Burgundian army are supposed to wear long swords, which I mean, mind-blowing on its own. This is from the ordinance from 1474. We have great sources from 1460s, from the 1470s. There is no personal heraldic color. Knights can retain their heraldry, but the color needs to be uniform. In fact, this could well be the beginning of the concept of a military uniform. I don't have enough data to back that one completely, but it is a possibility, and are very interesting at that. The Ordonnance d'Abbeville 1460s tells us that soldiers would all wear white and blue jackets with red Andreas crosses. The knights specifically had to have vermilion velvet crosses, which they were given to wear over their harnesses, and plumes of white and blue on their helmets and their horse armor. Fascinating. There is a text source of Duke Philip the Good ordering a bard horse armor made in the style of a brigandine in 1445. Now imagine that, a whole horse harness, basically like a brigandine. My gosh, if someone can pull that off, it definitely has to be the Burgundians. We'll see why in a moment. Velvet horse, gilded rivets, plumes, it must have looked outstanding. To be honest, I've never heard of anything like it from any other European sources. We see that even soldiers often have plumes on their helmets, and you see that some sallets have got banners on top. These are used to mark on the field lieutenants or sergeants, such as a 3rd Company, 7th Battalion and whatnot. Basically, these little flags that you see on top of the helmets, they work like the centurion's crests of the Roman army. They indicate your officers. Very well structured and organized army. A lot of brigandine is worn. Now, this is interesting because it's in contrast with the German soldiers, for example, whom nearly never wear brigandines in the late 15th century. As a matter of fact, I don't know of any evidence for it. Please let me know if you do know of any. So a big difference between France and Germany in the Middle Ages. The tapestries made for Charles the Bold show very beautiful, exquisite armor. They show antique scenes, so you do need to be careful, but the Burgundian love for such things show. So if we take these ornate knights and the vivid description of the splendor of the knights, we might get the idea that there could have been a specific fashion, a very pompous, flamboyant one at that. Burgundian knights loved showing off their wealth on the field, probably even more than any other knight in the medieval period. So, as an outcome of our little research together, knights have red velvet crosses as a specialty of the uniform of the Burgundian army. Sallets have got flags, which are used to identify captains and other kinds of officers, possibly a wearing of heroic, quasi all'antica armors by Burgundian knights to allure to the classical period, seemingly a very strong interest towards richness, such as gilded armor, velvet in multiple colors and the like. And, as I said, the multiple usage of brigandine both for the knights, soldiers and even horses. Now, some of the images that you're seeing today, such as this one, are actual pencil drawings. I'm not joking. And they were made by my friend Michele. He has a channel. He draws loads of knights and medieval soldiers, the majority of which are historically accurate. He's also got some fantasy stuff. But if you're into that kind of stuff and you want to see how these drawings were made, check out his channel, link in the description below. These images were also based on a great reenactors company called Compagnie 9e. Great Burgundian knight reenactors with incredible kits. So this is pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. I don't have any more information to relate because unfortunately, as I say, the sources are kind of scant. But as far as I understand, I think we do have enough. But I think we have gathered enough data to be at least intrigued by this Burgundian knight and their splendor. Now, as I mentioned, this video was sponsored by The Virgin Killer, and I'd like to show you a brief video that can introduce a bit more the protagonist of this book. Let's check it out. But if you have other ideas and you've got something else you wanted to add to what I said, or perhaps you don't agree with what I said, let me know in the comments below. It's always nice to have a little bit of a conversation in the comments, and I will see you soon for my next video. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.